In terms of the popped blood vessel in my eye, I think we're on the home stretch. I'm feeling a lot better about it. There's a new swagger update for your robot to have a new confident walk. I mean, I'm seeing the confidence in that. A new non-AI exoskeleton has been invented, so when the Terminator Uprising happens, humans still have some control. Check out this new BionicBee autonomous flight and swarm capabilities. So there's a new opinion piece that AI won't eat your job, but it will eat your salary. There's a new bio-inspired camera that can help AI systems see pedestrians 100 times faster. A Neuralink competitor just set a brand new record with 4,000 electrodes on the human brain. There's some new AI tools that are making the US power grid more reliable. A community member sent me a new diffusion model that works really well with faces. That super cool 3D tool Wonder Dynamics made has now been acquired by Autodesk. So it turns out AI models don't do random, but they do have favorite numbers, you know, because they think they're people. But first, let's check Alan's countdown to AGI and see that we are still at 74% of the way there. All right, so check out the swagger in this little robot. Doesn't he just walk more baller than any other robot? And I feel like they really nailed it. It's like not a tough guy walk. It's not a weird walk. It's just, you know, this is my world. I live in it. I'm confident in who I am, but also I'm humble enough to know that I don't know everything. This is the walk of somebody who knows where they're going, but knows it's going to be a challenge. So this robot is coming out of the Japanese firm Robotic Labs, which is committing itself to crafting a bipedal robot that captures the elegance and nimbleness of humans. Thank you at last, a robot that doesn't look like it needs a toilet in a hurry. Do other bipedal robots look like they have to go to the bathroom? I'll investigate. Sounds like a good use of time. Let me know in the comments below. Does that look like a robot that needs to use the restroom really bad? It kind of does. Honestly, it kind of does now that I see it under that light. Then there's something about just like I'm walking to the bathroom and I'm just holding it in and just keep my torso straight. You're not wrong. So for those of you that are worried about the Terminator-like scenario where AI does an uprising on us, we're going to need some non-AI tech to compete with that kind of strength, and that's exactly what this guy's building. This is the anti-robot, no automation, 100% controlled by human operator inside mech suit. Look at that. You can flip over a car, you can crush a thing. Now this is humans elevated to the extreme. Look at that thing stomping around, huh? Let me get a megaphone in there, give out a tribal cry before you go running into war. But the question is, could it survive a swarm of robotic bees? Oh, I'm sure you're asking, do robotic bees even exist? They do now, I think. Some people are questioning how real this video is, but I think they do. So this company, Festo, has created a BionicBee. It's an autonomous robot that can swarm like a bee. The behavior could have many benefits in biomimetic robot swarms. And there's plenty of applications for a robotic bee in both the civilian and military world. Do you remember those super cool Firefly looking kind of helicopter-y things from the movie Dune? Like, they're just so sick. Look at how cool they look. And you just know they can maneuver so much faster than a traditional helicopter could. Well, I'm guessing those guys over at Festo actually loved that movie too, because they built this, the BionicBee. All right, so look at those wings. You have to have such a high, do you even call them RPM if they're not circles, but just like high flapping speed. So they hired the best in balding men with blue shirts to make this happen. And that was the key to that pretty cool looking robot. I mean, obviously, I've got a soft spot in my heart for bees because I love the idea of thinking of the whole hive as a super organism that can like accomplish more than all the individual units. Sort of a systems approach to picking my favorite animal. Okay, not RPM. So the wing beat frequency is 15 hertz. So that means that the wing itself actually goes back and forth, like it does a complete cycle 15 times per second. All right, so this author, Sangit Koldri, has an opinion that AI won't eat your job, but it will eat your salary. And he starts by talking about how the AI augmentation fallacy goes something like this. AI won't take your job, but somebody using AI might. So he argues that AI is perfectly poised to attack not your job, but the ability to charge for the skilled premium for it. So I'm trying to think in my head what that would mean. Like if you're a plumber, there's still jobs for plumbers, but you can't charge more because the market needs plumbers so bad that you can drive the price up. Or you might still need an accountant, but like a regular person could use AI to augment their skills and do your accounting for you, so you wouldn't need to just bid up the few accountants that are available like towards the middle of April when you need them. So you can see here, every job is just a bundle of tasks. And so he breaks it up into commoditized tasks and specialized tasks, with technology being a component. But sometimes technology ends up becoming a substitute for part of your job. Technology creates complements and substitutes for specific tasks. And then the post-substitution job bundle just looks more common. More people can do it, so you can't charge a premium for it anymore. And that final outcome is like a commoditization of whatever you're doing. So augmentation absorbs values from the specialized tasks, commoditizes them over time. Now, in contrast to this, I've definitely heard people arguing that like the way ChatGPT can code is like a junior developer. So you can write a bunch of the boilerplate, template-y stuff, but you're still going to need the expertise. And that might even become more needed because more average people are writing like generic code that needs to actually be like perfected for that last 10% that a company needs. So it seems like it might go the other way too, but I'm open to this argument. I think there's a lot of truth to this in the long run. All right, so if you're driving around with your Tesla like I do sometimes, and you're like always checking to see if it has actually detected a pedestrian in its little vector space graphic for you, now there's a new bio-inspired camera and an AI system that can help detect pedestrians 100 times faster. I mean, they're right about this. It's every driver's nightmare. A pedestrian steps out in front of a car seemingly out of nowhere, leaving only a fraction of a second to brake or steer away from them. And right now, the automated systems for braking can be helpful, but they're not yet fast or reliable enough. Yeah, I mean, I think a car, if it has a high, like 99% probability that it's going to hit a person, no matter how direct or manual the system is, it should just stop you. And here's the crux of it. A camera just takes individual frames, maybe like 30 or 60 per second. And then an AI object detector needs to look at those frames and see if it detects a human in them. But if something happens in the 20 or 30 milliseconds between snapshots, the camera might see it too late. So you might say, well, then increase the frame rate, right? Maybe 120 frames a second, but that creates way more data to be processed. And then there is some loss of the system overall detecting anything. And they're using something called event cameras, and they're different. It's a different principle because they have smart pixels that record information every time they detect fast movements. So in this way, they have no blind spots between frames, which allows them to detect obstacles more quickly. They're also called neuromorphic cameras because they mimic how the human eye perceives images. When they should be augmenting, not replacing the data anyway, because they have different blind spots. Like they could miss a pedestrian moving slower than a normal person moves if they were just like an old person just moving very, very slow. And when they used the two together, they found that it led to a 100 times faster detection of pedestrians. So after covering that Neuralink patient that was so accurate with moving his mouse and right-clicking and doing all that stuff in the last video, I thought this was really interesting. It's a Neuralink rival, and they set the brain chip record with 4,000 electrodes on the human brain. Now, of course, overall, like this whole like brain interface stuff is already kind of freaking me out, but the fact is, this is quite the breakthrough. So in April, a neurosurgery team placed one of these devices containing 4 electrode-containing films, total of more than 4,000 electrodes, onto the brain of a patient who was having surgery to remove a brain tumor. So while the patient was asleep with their skull opened, exposed, they actually put 4 electrode arrays to successfully record the detailed neuronal activity from an area of approximately 8 square centimeters on the brain. Wow, like 8 square centimeters? Yeah, that seems pretty big. And if that sounds exciting to you, Precision says that it expects to have the first device on the commercial market in 2025. All right, so a study from the University of Michigan was trying to find better ways to optimize the power grid for EV charging. So they turned to artificial intelligence to help them understand the periodic bursts of energy that kind of naturally happen when thousands of people are independently trying to charge their EVs whenever they're low. So basically there wasn't any way to predict when these inconsistent bursts would like pull all this power from the grid, which was like leading to a bunch of problems. But if you think about an entire city, you think there'd be overall patterns, right? Like maybe after work or at nighttime when people are charging overnight at home. But then there's also varying demands, like more businesses are moving to EV, so they might be charging during the afternoon, or there might be other use cases like these crypto miners or all these GPUs and all sorts of random other kinds of electronics showing up that are taken from the grid too. So they're using AI to predict these issues before they happen, and they're getting fairly good at making that prediction. It seems like the biggest hurdle is just getting the right data at this point, but I think there's some promise here. And even though they couldn't accurately make a prediction yet, it did indicate that AI has promise in identifying and addressing irregular charging patterns. Okay, so I wanted to show you this interesting tool for taking a face and like modifying it with text through a diffusion model and still keeping the main characteristics of the face, because it seems like a pretty good tool for keeping a face in a way that looks like the same person, which I always hate with Midjourney. So check this out, my profile picture, but now as a superhero. I mean, just being realistic, it did kind of get the way my hair sort of flows here. It got that unfortunate wrinkle under my eye. I do kind of do that with my forehead. I seem right. The beard is in the correct place. Totally captured the triceps and pecs correctly. I wish. Okay, here's me as a cowboy. Oh my gosh, what do we got going on over here? I mean, let's be honest, I love that picture. My instinct is like to put that on Instagram right now. That is cool. That one, maybe not so much, but no, to be honest, this one's probably more really like me. You take the cool down a little bit, but the realism actually is probably even better in that one. God, it's crazy. It really captures my sort of little beard thing here pretty well. And the cowboy hat fits well. The shirt looks very real. The scarf, the bandana, the whole shirt. Wow. Black and white version. Okay, actually, that's all I was going to do, but also I'm a Viking. You know, my ancestors were Vikings, so I got to do one like that. And here is me as a Viking. I really hope this one turns out cool. We definitely made a mistake. First off, Viking, the dual horn Viking thing, that's a stereotype. Second, it's like got my hair and not really a kind of Viking helmet on. It's going out of the head. So totally messed that up. But if we actually just want to look at the quality of the facial structure, that feels like my nose, my face, the bag under my eye, the way my beard works, and how my hair kind of is, minus that ponytail thing. But this outfit, the neck, it's a really good portrait. You know, I'd definitely be regenerating it because of the horns. And then this one, yeah, I mean, maybe just the harsh lighting makes it a little more aged, but once again, if I was rocking that kind of a beard and I let it go a little more Viking like that, this is good. Good stuff. All right, so you probably heard about Wonder Dynamics. I remember Matt Wolf covered this a long time ago, and it's always been a super impressive tool for taking a handful of robots that are predetermined and then just replacing humans in any clip that you upload. Obviously, they were off to something really cool, and it felt like a little bit of a one-trick pony, but that trick was super good, and they did it really well. And I'm not surprised that now I can announce Autodesk has acquired them. At the company's debut back in 2021, they were in stealth mode. They raised $2.5 million in seed. Then they raised another $10 million later that year. So who knows what they got acquired for? I mean, with the talent they have and maybe the base they built off. Oh, it doesn't seem like it specifies, but I'm going to guess like 100 million or something. I mean, Autodesk is a big company. Wow, that's interesting. In the grand scheme of things, Autodesk is pretty low. So over a 5-year plan, their shares were trading at 165. Now they're only up to 200. They've been down to 1. They've been up to 332. Not financial advice, but I feel like they could benefit a lot from artificial intelligence. I feel like that's a really good acquisition for them. I mean, look, AutoCAD is such an industry standard, and Maya and 3ds Max are really big 3D programs. Have to wonder if that stock might go through the roof at some point. So I remember learning about like 6 months ago that large language models can't give you a random number. So if you say, give me a random number over and over again, and you plot that out, it is not random. It does not even out over time. The law of large numbers does not apply to large language models generating numbers. Turns out that AI models have favorite numbers for a couple reasons. One is when they're learning about numbers and they're out there searching the internet, they see some numbers more than others, so it's kind of misrepresented in the original data. Second, it's like us. Humans also have that problem. You cannot ask a person to just give you random numbers and get a random distribution of numbers. You can be like 43, 15, 17, 18, but I guarantee you're not going to evenly distribute between 1 and 100. And counterintuitively, one of the weird things about the way humans pick random numbers is that real coin flips look less random. Like, we almost structure what we imagine randomness into it to the point that it's not a random distribution anymore. So when you ask people to pick a number between 0 and 100, people almost never pick 1 or 100. Multiples of 5 are rare, which I was actually going to guess. I thought a lot of people would say 25, 15, 10, stuff like that, but they don't, because they're trying to pick a random number. So they pick something that's not a multiple of 5, surprisingly. And more often than not, we pick a number that ends in 7. So 67, 47, 27. And that itself is a pattern above what the natural frequency should be. And in case you're wondering, GPT 3.5 Turbo really likes the number 47, which is weird because GPT-3 liked the number 42, which is the same with Claude. So Anthropic's model, Claude, loves 42. That's its favorite number. And what do you think Google Gemini has as its favorite number? Take a guess. 3, 2, 1, 72. Strangely, all the models tended to avoid the low and high numbers. In fact, Claude never went above 87 or below 27. Double digits were almost always avoided, so no 33s, no 55s, no 66s. But to Google's credit, the Gemini large language model was the only model, and it only did it one time, picked 0. Here's a real world test. Claude, give me a random number. 42. Oh my God. We knew that was one of the big numbers that comes up. That's so weird. Gemini, give me a random number. 42 again. Shut up. I did not expect it to be that predictable. I figured if you plotted it a lot, you'd get a lot of 42s, but I did not expect Claude and Gemini to both give me 42 right now. All right, it's all up to you, GPT-4o. Let's see if you're a little bit better. Your random number is 39. All right, thanks. Cool. All right, let's talk about some research, because this post, Revolutionizing AI Embeddings with Geometry and How Angular Information Can Lift Up LLMs and Beyond, has a lot of fascinating things to think about. Because I like to always go over embeddings because they're so abstract and they're a terrible word for what they mean. I like to think of embeddings as a translation from the world of crazy data that it digests from the internet into a vector space, into a mathematical representation which is much more precise and can be calculated. They should be called like computer translation or something, but this is a new type of translation, calling it basically an angular transition or an angular embedding. And what it means is that it's actually trying to understand this information in a latent space in a contextual way. You can bring them in a way that thinks about the entire number line in 2 dimensions. Imaginary numbers are factored in. The complex plane is factored in to help represent the data on the way in during the embedding phase. And I guess this can help capture the relationships better. It does a better job of handling outliers. And this approach can avoid the saturation zone, which is the problem of cosine similarity, and it makes learning just more effective. Now remember, this isn't like a research paper in particular. This is an Apple researcher who was sharing a lot of great papers with this author. Oh, that's so funny. I didn't actually realize the author was Devanish, who I listen to his podcast all the time, and he has great people on, and he's super smart. Interesting. So it's him putting this paper together with the synthesis from his friend who's an Apple engineer and a bunch of papers that he got shared with. Now, I've always thought there was something fascinating about the complex plane. Yeah, in fact, I did this video 5 months ago called Is the Complex Number Line the Future of AI? And I learned a ton during that process. But the thing is, orthogonality, meaning like how things are related, kind of adjacent or orthogonal to one another, is a big part of understanding meaning and doing calculations. So you have to think about a token. Let's think about it in a large language model like man, woman, king, queen, all these things having relationships to each other and having them be points and having them be measured in terms of a vector, like an arrow between the two. And these arrows have angles compared to other vectors, and they also have magnitudes, like lengths compared to other vectors. And we're always like normalizing or shrinking the length. Like we really care about the angles. We usually don't kind of care about how far they are from one another because that gets too messy. So you're always like normalizing it. You're squishing it back down. But this idea of using the complex number line in the first place naturally shifts the focus away from the magnitude and more into what the angle is compared to the other, the other token. Next up, let's talk about breaking the AI energy barrier and the rise of thermodynamic computing. Raise your hand if you like thermodynamics. Make it 2. We both do. I know you do. Well, one way to think about artificial intelligence models is in terms of entropy and energy and thermodynamics. And these AI models are absolutely skyrocketing. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars are being put into them, and the equivalent energy that they're taking is mind-blowing. We've heard multiple times now from Microsoft, from OpenAI, that the actual limiting factor isn't so much the GPUs that NVIDIA is pumping out and other AI companies are, but it's actually the power grid itself. And maybe we need fusion power or safer forms of nuclear or something, but power is really a limiting factor right now. And that's where the story of thermodynamic computing enters. So when you're thinking about thermodynamic computing, you're integrating thermodynamic principles directly into the computing process. All right, so a conventional system that's binary and deterministic, you have to use some energy to switch the 1 to the 0 in whatever form that you're storing that at. But those are all physical systems and they require physical energy to do that, and they have heat as a byproduct, and that's why they're so hot. All these computers, these processors, and all this extra heat that's flying around these server centers. So thermodynamic computing harnesses natural processes for computation. It's an entire new category of how to think about these models. It sidesteps the energy-heavy traditional systems, and I don't really have like an answer here for like how you build these things, but it's just the idea that you can start thinking about things completely differently. So here there's like classical mechanisms. There's this sort of in-between quantum and classical space called thermodynamic, where you're using some kind of optimization just in the general understanding of thermodynamics in the first place. So yeah, I just wanted to put that on your radar. It's something I'm still learning a lot about myself, but I can see how it would be important, and I want to know more about it. I'm curious. So now let's talk about ARIA, a new program for advanced socio-technical testing and evaluation for artificial intelligence. Now, this is an official government website. This is NIST.gov. And NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And they're in charge of assessing some risks for the impact of AI, and this is their new program, which dives into how AI systems interact with society. You know, like when they're out there in the real world actually being used by people, like we're still collecting all that data. For all the internal testing companies like OpenAI do, when you get out into the real world, there's all sorts of new things to be measured, and they have to be measured at a societal level because there's no other place where you can get accurate data. So this initiative is about finding out the good and bad in that process. So hopefully this does become the groundwork for trustworthy AI systems of the future. All right, so this post written by Jan Slort might be worth a read. I mean, it paints a pretty grim picture of the current like socio-economical kind of situation, but I still found it really useful because it can like group the US population into these 4 different groups, which I think kind of makes sense. They seem like a kind of rough way to kind of bucket all of us. Now, the first group of the population is the 10% of people that have all the assets that they need to actually make a living doing nothing. So that's having so much money in a dividend-paying account that the dividends pay for your entire lifestyle, and there's literally no way you're going to go broke if you stay below your means. So those people can stay on cruise control forever, no worries. Now there's another 45% of people that are active workers. They earn their money through labor or knowledge work each year. So that's someone like me. I have to do consulting and make YouTube videos to try to earn enough money. But if I stop doing it, the money doesn't come in, bills don't get paid. Now another 35% of the population is retired. They have put a lot of work in. They've been in that 45% category most of their lives, but now they're retired. And then there's the 10% that are just receiving money, disability benefits, public welfare, charity, stuff like that. So from that premise that you have these 4 buckets that you have to sort of think about those as variables as you imagine what's going to happen between now and 2030, then it goes through things like what happens with a positive or negative stock market. What about if people start moving their money into safe places like treasury bills? Like what happens to real estate and the office space market, rental versus ownership on properties, retail space, how all of those changes could affect the way cities and governments actually collect revenue from taxes, and all of that being pushed around by this like giant like ocean earthquake that's artificial intelligence and technology that's just taking industry after industry, job after job. You know, and obviously nobody knows how all these variables play out, but this article just starts to put all those variables into your head and how many moving parts there are to making any of these predictions. And how if you start thinking about tools like large language models and general vision models and all of these things that are general and how general their effects can be and how general is a big change to society as a whole. So yeah, and I have no other videos to analyze because I filmed yesterday and I haven't uploaded a new video since then. So you've already seen the analytics, so I'm going to save that part on this video for the next one. I'm going to be going to Cisco Live tomorrow. Small, medium-sized chance I'm going to meet Matt Wolf, which is super exciting. So I'll let you know how that goes. But if you guys could keep commenting, sharing it, obviously the channel is growing at a pretty good pace. And yeah, if I keep thinking about some exponential growth, we might actually get there. If you could share this in a Discord, maybe do a super thanks, like it. Never talk about the newsletter, but if you click and put your email in there, then you'll get emails. Actually, I got to start talking about that more. It's like a newsletter list, but it's not AI news. It's just me sending these videos to your email. But if you don't trust like the bell notification or just want it on the For You page, but would like an email when I release a new video, sign up. So don't forget to BionicBee smashing that subscribe button.